Hello and welcome. Genetically modified organisms, otherwise known as GMOs, are plants, animals, microorganisms, or other organisms whose genetic makeup have been modified in a laboratory with the use of genetic engineering or transgenic technology. Over the years, there has been a huge debate over the inherent danger or otherwise in the use and consumption of GMOs. The debate has been between what is popularly known as the pro and anti-GMO activists. It appears as if the proponents of GMOs are winning the argument, or are they? If they are, what does this portend for the general well-being of the Nigerian public? Welcome to Fireworks, TVC's Hard Talk interview program. I am Bukola Samuel-Wemimo. Of course, from my trail, I'm sure you get the idea that our focus today will be on genetically modified organisms. And my guest is someone who is knowledgeable in these issues. Let's take a moment. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us on Fireworks. Today, my guest is a professor from the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, specifically from the Institute of Agricultural Research, in the person of Professor Ishaku Mohammed. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you.
Okay, so the Nigerian government has approved for use the first genetically modified crop, that's the pod borer resistant cowpea, popularly called beans. You in fact issued that statement disclosing that information. Professor, please educate us. What was the process that went into the research and the outcome judging the pod borer cowpea safe for consumption?
First of all, beans, as you know, is one of the most popular food items for Nigerians. And growing of beans in the field is associated with a lot of problems. The major one is insect attack. Farmers are aware of this problem, but consumers may not notice it except for the insect that is associated with storage. The field insects are numerous, but the most destructive one is this pod borer insect. For farmers to control this insect in the field, for them to harvest something substantial, they will have to invest in buying harmful insecticides which they spray on these beans before they will be able to harvest anything. We have used different conventional approaches in plant improvement in order to improve the performance of beans. Now, one of the ones that remains so recalcitrant that we could not find any conventional solution to is the effort to develop self-protecting beans against this insect, until when we were able to deploy this scientific approach. And what it entails is that we learned from old practice by farmers. They ferment soil, and then from the fermented product of the soil, they spray on their vegetable crops, and that results in the control of insects on other crops. Science is applied to develop a technology. From the knowledge of the ability of soil products to control insects on vegetables, we learned that and studied what are the factors that contribute to the control of this insect. We identified a harmless bacteria that has the ability to attack this insect, but not the vegetable crop. We used genetic engineering technology to borrow from the bacteria that capacity to protect the vegetable. And
what's this bacteria called, by the way?
It is called Bacillus thuringiensis. Bacillus thuringiensis is soil-borne, is found everywhere, is harmless, is known to all biologists as a very harmless bacteria, apart from harboring the ability to be able to protect a particular group of insects. It doesn't do anything else. So this science was borrowed to develop this technology, and from that basis, this capacity of the bacteria was mimicked and put it into the beans. So the beans now is able to protect itself. We tested it in the laboratory. We bred insects. The same insect from the field were caught. They were put on the beans that is growing, but the beans was able to protect itself. But specifically, this protection is only against that particular insect.
So we can call this bacteria a pesticide?
Yes, it is a pesticide-producing bacteria.
So
it is this pesticide
it kills the insect. Would I be safe to say that consumers of the pod borer cowpea would be consuming pod borer? They'll be consuming a pesticide?
No. The pesticide that is produced by the bacteria is not the one we are now applying. We mimicked the science of the bacteria producing the pesticide to protect the insect. So we mimicked that into the beans itself, so that the beans itself will be able to develop reaction to control the insect, so that if the insect attack the beans will now attack back. But that attack is only restricted to that specific insect and not any other insect. So unknowingly, we have been consuming that bacteria. It is a very harmless
But it's
bacteria.
a natural process which scientists called biodiversity. And that is different from this technology that you have mimicked to produce what could be a counterfeit of the natural bacteria itself.
We mimicked the genetic characteristics of the bacteria. For
to
example,
produce a photocopy.
To produce a photocopy of
Absolutely.
that gene.
So that
of
photocopy, would
material.
you as an individual consume it
Yes.
on your own?
Yes.
It is safe.
Yes, it is very safe. I have consumed it severally.
The concern of anti-GMO activists is that you are applying a pesticide to a food crop. You are as good as consuming the pesticide.
This particular bacteria, I told you, bacteria, there are different types of bacteria, as much as we have different organisms, and each of them have their own genetic makeup, and through these genes, they have capacity to be able to express different things. This particular harmless bacteria has in its heritable code the capacity to synthesize something that has a pesticidal effect against a particular insect that attacks beans in the field. So we identified this gene and introduced it into our beans. So the beans itself manufactures the factor that exists in that bacteria to be able to protect itself against this particular insect. So we are not applying any pesticide. In fact, if anything, this technology now reduces the need to apply as much pesticides as farmers used to do. Farmers ordinarily have to spray up to 8 times to be able to harvest substantially from the field. Otherwise, they may end up not getting anything. With the development of this technology, farmers will only need to spray only twice, which means the need to spray pesticide has now substantially been reduced through this technology.
I would be correct if I said that similar field trials that you carried out successfully were being carried out in other African countries. In Ghana, for instance, where field trials have been underway since 2012, the validity of those trials were being vehemently disputed by Food Sovereignty Ghana, who has applied to court for an interdict to stop the commercial release of the GMO cowpea. The similar thing occurred in Malawi by the Bunda College, which vehemently resisted a coalition of civil society organizations, the introduction of the GM cowpea. So pray tell me, why is it having a smooth sail in Nigeria if it is being rejected in other African countries?
Rejection, for whatever reason, I don't think if there is anything called rejection. These are submissions by food sovereignty and groups like that. You have earlier on in your introduction alluded to those who are for this technology and those who are not for the technology. We have scientific evidences. Our laboratories are open for everybody to come and examine our data. We have called farmers during field days. They have witnessed the remarkable differences in terms of this new variety we have developed as compared to other conventional ones.
So what is the interest of the European Union that has also rejected genetically modified organisms? It's rejected in South Africa.
Also. Yes, let me explain that one also. So that they employ people from behind. Nobody will want to come forward and say that it's because my business interest is being threatened, that's why I'm fighting this technology. It will sound very absurd. So from behind, they are going to enlist others who will do the fighting for them and pretend to be humanistic. It is on the basis of wanting to protect farmers or consumers and so on, and a lot of pretensions. These are mere pretensions, but the underlying thing is to protect their subsistence in wanting to sell their products. Now, coming back to Europe, the European Union, the agriculture, as a Nigerian, I'm speaking to you to explain the comparison between Europe and America. Agriculture in America is more advanced, is more profitable, simply because they have deployed a number of technologies. Europe realized it when it is too late that Americans have made substantial progress by deploying technology. And Europe wanted to use the wait and catch up game. And our African brothers and sisters are being paid to ensure that Africa remains where it is. Now, if you compare the performance of European agriculture and European food security, the European choices of doing things is not comparable to what we have in Africa. And
sponsoring African brothers and sisters to ensure that Africa remains where it is. Are you sure and confident of what you're saying, Professor? Because there are also concerns which one should take a second look at, independent of the interest, that genetically modified seedlings, once they're introduced into Africa, into Nigeria, let's come closer home now, they have the propensity or the tendency to take over, to contaminate. I don't know if I'm using the correct terminologies now, our own natural seedlings, such that Africa, Nigeria, would now be dependent on GMO companies that produce these seedlings.
You see, these are fear-mongering strategies that are being spread around. I'm a Nigerian scientist. I'm being paid by Nigerian government. And I will not be allowed to engage in anything that is going to be subversive to the development of my country. People said, since you are taking genes across species, they must be tested and proven to be safe scientifically for human health and for food. That was what the convention said, and a protocol was developed, and all countries were signatories. Nigeria is part of those countries that signed on to that convention and also the protocol. Now, what is demanded is, for this testing is not anything extraordinary. The same thing was required in the aviation industry. You have to show that something is safe. The same thing in the food industry. You have to test. That's why NAFDAC has to give you a registration number after you must have shown how safe it is. So the testing of GMO is not anything in the extraordinary. It is just to show that it is safe. And as far as scientific evidences are concerned, up to now, there is no single scientifically proven any problem associated with GMO, either crops or animals.
All right. You talked about interest earlier on. We will examine interest as against other GMO technologies, but that will be after the break. You're watching Fireworks. Today, my guest is Professor Ishaku Mohammed from the Ahmadu Bello University. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Thank you for staying tuned. If you've just joined us, this is Fireworks, and my guest today is Professor Ishaku Mohammed from the Ahmadu Bello University, from the Institute of Agricultural Research, to be precise. And our focus today is on genetically modified organisms. The debate is continuing, particularly between proponents and those arguing against. What are the issues? How safe genetically modified organisms for human consumption. Professor, earlier on you talked about interests that, you know, these international organizations are sponsoring our own African brothers back home to sponsor fear such that we will be perpetually dependent on them. Am I correct? Is that your line of argument?
Yes.
Okay,
right.
so the organizations who are sponsoring these trials on the pod borer cowpea across the African continent, they are the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, am I correct? And the Department for International Development, DFID, of the UK, and the Rockefeller Foundation. So these organizations, are they working at cross purposes?
The European countries in particular have realized in recent times that their own agriculture is at least relatively backward compared to the American agriculture. And so, and again, at the same time, they are the ones that own most of the giant chemical producing pesticides in particular all over the world. Most of these big chemical companies that sell insecticides reside in Europe, substantially. So if you add the two, you will recognize that the European Union or the European countries, most of them, would have taken this stance to ensure that there is a perpetuation of their control in the marketing, in the production and marketing of these chemical compounds, which are being used in our own agriculture.
From the DFID and the USAID to sponsor these field trials that led to the approval of the pod borer cowpea. You are a beneficiary of that support.
Yes.
How much did these agencies release for this 10-year, this research that spanned over 10 years?
Well, they are all supplementary because they supplemented. We have substantially used Nigerian money to do it. They only supplemented what we have done. I will not have the exact figures on it, but it's going to be to the tune of around $1 million.
Oh, interesting.
Over the 10 years.
Okay, so you have motivation. Now we're talking, we're getting an idea of what exactly happened. You were paid for your research.
I'm being paid by Nigerian government.
But you are also a beneficiary of that support from these agencies.
I am supplemented.
Yes. To the tune of how much, Professor?
No, I've just said it. Over the 10 years, it's probably around the region of $1 million.
So you would not be objective. You've been paid for this research that you're carrying out.
No, why wouldn't I be objective? Who is going to use this research? Who is going to use it? Nigerian farmers are going to use it.
But if you got $1 million, for instance, I'm not saying that's how much came to you, you would not, you would rather talk about what is safe and ignore the dangers.
No, not me as a Nigerian. I would not have even proceeded if it is dangerous. I will not do it. I started it. They did not start it for us. We only requested for supplementation.
And you got the support?
Definitely.
Would you tell us how much exactly came into your own pocket personally?
Nothing has come into my own pocket.
Personally?
It is, no. It is not intended
from
for me
these
to
international
benefit.
agencies, apart from what you're paid by the Nigerian government?
Nothing. I have my institution.
And you would have us believe that?
I have all
a
my
research that
financial
spanned
profile.
over 10 years,
I
Professor.
have my financial profile that is open to everybody to see. I am a public servant being paid by the government of Nigeria.
So you did not benefit from the USAID sponsorship, from the DFID sponsorship?
I have not, my research.
But you acknowledge that indeed
I am not.
They sponsored the field trials.
They didn't sponsor the field trial. They supplemented, just like they did in AIDS research.
Supplementing is vague, Professor.
In our elections.
Professor, supplementing is vague. When they supplemented, what do you mean? How did they go about supplementing?
When you say something is supplemented, it means it is not significant.
It is not significant.
Yes.
But something was paid.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, they sponsored these field trials.
That I am bold enough to tell you this, but many of these guys who pose as who are supporting Nigerian farmers will not come and tell you what they are doing from behind the scene. I'm only honest enough to look at Nigerians and tell you what exactly is happening, because I'm doing it on behalf of Nigerians, and Nigerian government knows what I'm doing. My institute knows exactly what I'm doing.
It's curious when you say the interest of the European Union in these GMO activity is to keep African countries perpetually bound, dependent on them. Therefore, they're sponsoring African brothers, against Africans. Because why would South Africa, for instance, choose to reject the technology? Why would Malawi,
it's not true.
Ghana?
It's not true. South Africa did not reject it.
The information is in the public. You could choose to contest it, Professor.
Yes.
But let's talk about the CRY1AB gene that you
up to tomorrow
referred to earlier. You said it is the gene that is
sold
introduced
in South Africa. It is being consumed in South Africa. Just recently in Zambia, they withdrew the moratorium on GMO, and other places in Africa. So therefore, it is not correct to say that South Africa rejected GMO. GMO is the backbone of the South African agriculture. The information is in the public, Professor, and I have it here. The CRY1AB gene is an old throwaway technology, now discontinued in South Africa, where the cultivation of Monsanto's GM maize, MON 810, containing the same transgene, caused massive pest resistance and infestation. So this information is in the public. Yeah, the public can have anything. The public can have anything, but it's not substantiated. I'm telling you, these are things that we have junk literature. Even in science, we have junk literature. We know things we respect.
Anti-GMO activists also talk about, they ask, why alter biodiversity? Because the natural process of plant selection could either result in positive or negative outcomes. So why alter it just because you want to make it safe?
But why alter it? There are reasons why you have to undertake certain things in human development. Why do we use tractors to clear the land? Why do we clear places to build dams? Why do we fly aircrafts? They are going to kill some insects in the sky and on the land and so on. So human development is prioritizing what aspect is going to be more beneficial to human life. And with everything, there is impact assessment, environmental impact assessment. You have to weigh on whether or not it is worth doing it. And of all the things that are undertaken in terms of GMO technology, all of them have been substantiated to have no negative impact either on the environment or as food in our food chains.
What we're talking about here is what goes into the human body. And if it is good, it amounts to a healthy individual. If it is bad, it results in an individual that is unhealthy.
The healthy issue has been settled. I am speaking authoritatively as a scientist, and I have my integrity to protect. What I am presenting to the Nigerian public is based on scientific evidence, not based on any emotions or any superstition.
Or any inducement?
No, not at all.
Okay. Let's make progress now. There is also the concern. Let's move to choice. As an individual, I will choose to act on the information available to me in the public. So I could decide not to consume GMO because of what I've heard. How and what is the National Biosafety Management Agency doing to ensure that GMO crops that are being introduced into the country are labeled so that individuals can make their choice?
There is a requirement by law that they must be labeled for Nigerians to choose whether they want to consume it or not. Anybody that fails, there's a punishment in the law. It will be prosecuted and will be convicted accordingly. So NBMA, I'm not speaking on their behalf. They know how to do it. They have their staff. They have trained them. And they have set them on course to be able to implement what the laws puts in place for that purpose. GMOs.
And you trust the NBMA, yes, to carry this regulation activity well?
As much as I trust all Nigerian institutions, I trust our Nigerian army, I trust the Nigerian police, I trust the Nigerian judiciary.
This is an organization whose officials...
I trusted NBMA.
But are you aware that Monsanto, this agency, got a case against it where U.S. Gardner secured a judgment from a court asking Monsanto to pay him $39 million because the products that Monsanto is producing harmed the gardener?
You see, I don't know the details about that case. I don't know what kind of harm. Harm is a legal term that can be construed to mean a number of things. It may not be something scientific. It could be some other things.
$39 million.
It doesn't matter. People claim damages to whatever tune that they deem fit. We are talking about science. The damage could have been something else. And it is still a damage, but it's not scientific damage.
Interesting. I'm in no doubt of your position on these issues. I thank you very much for your time on Fireworks today. Thank you so much for being there on Fireworks today. Of course, we have better information, or more information if you like, on the danger or safety of genetically modified organisms, and it's left for Nigerians to make up their minds. Join us again same time next week when we'll bring you another interesting edition of the program. I am Bukola Samuel-Wemimo. Bye for now.